Pfizer slashes drug prices in U.S. After Trump's policies, Americans to save hundreds of millions annually. Washington, D.C. In a move that has sent shockwaves across the healthcare and political landscape, pharmaceutical giant Pfizer announced it will significantly slash prices on a wide range of prescription medications in the United States. The company attributed the unprecedented decision to policy changes introduced under former President Donald Trump, marking a rare moment when a corporate heavyweight openly acknowledges the impact of political leadership on its pricing strategies. According to initial estimates, the discounts are expected to save American patients hundreds of millions of dollars annually. The news has been greeted with both celebration and skepticism, hailed by many as a long-overdue victory for patients burdened by sky-high drug costs, but also questioned by experts who doubt whether the reductions will be broad enough to truly transform the nation's healthcare affordability crisis. Pfizer's announcement, made during a high-profile press conference in New York City, detailed a sweeping plan to reduce the prices of numerous brand-name drugs, including treatments for chronic conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, and certain cancers. The discounts, which the company described as historic in scope, will be rolled out gradually over the coming year. Company representatives emphasized that the move was not a short-term public relations gesture, but rather part of a long-term restructuring of its pricing model in the U.S. market. "We recognize the urgent need for affordable healthcare," said a Pfizer spokesperson. "These changes are possible because of a more predictable regulatory environment and reforms that incentivize innovation without punishing accessibility." The reference to regulatory reforms was widely interpreted as a nod to Trump-era policies that sought to break what the former president often described as Big Pharma's monopoly over drug pricing. During his administration, Trump repeatedly clashed with pharmaceutical companies, threatening executive orders and trade restrictions unless prices came down. Political allies of the former president were quick to seize on the development as evidence of Trump's continued influence. President Trump promised to fight for American patients, and once again, he delivered, said a statement from Trump's campaign team. Meanwhile, current administration officials adopted a more cautious tone. While welcoming lower drug prices, they stressed that long-term oversight would be necessary to ensure that discounts are real, not cosmetic. "Patients must actually feel these savings at the pharmacy counter," one official noted. Healthcare advocacy groups, long skeptical of pharmaceutical companies, responded with guarded optimism. "This could be life-changing for millions," said the head of Patients First, a nonprofit lobbying for affordable medications. "But we'll be watching closely to make sure Pfizer doesn't quietly raise prices elsewhere to compensate." Wall Street responded with mixed signals. Pfizer's stock dipped slightly in early trading amid concerns that reduced revenues from the U.S. market could weigh on profits. However, analysts noted that the move could also strengthen Pfizer's brand reputation, potentially leading to stronger international sales. "This is a bold gamble," said one healthcare economist. "Pfizer is betting that goodwill, market share, and political capital are worth more than short-term profit margins." The announcement has also put pressure on other pharmaceutical giants, such as Merck, Johnson & Johnson, and Novartis, to consider similar reductions. Analysts predict a ripple effect across the industry, as competitors will not want to appear resistant to public demand for affordability. For millions of Americans struggling with rising healthcare costs, Pfizer's move is more than a corporate strategy, it's a lifeline. Families battling medical debt, seniors rationing insulin, and patients skipping treatments due to costs may soon see relief. The price of prescription drugs in the United States has been one of the most fiercely debated issues in modern politics. For decades, Americans have paid significantly more for the same medications than patients in other developed countries, often 2 to 3 times higher. This has led to widespread frustration, medical bankruptcies, and a public perception that the pharmaceutical industry holds unchecked power over healthcare access. Unlike many nations that regulate medicine costs directly, the U.S. has historically allowed pharmaceutical companies to set their own prices, subject only to market forces. This approach, grounded in the idea that free market competition spurs innovation, has indeed led to breakthroughs in treatment. American labs and companies produce a disproportionate share of the world's most advanced drugs, from cancer immunotherapies to life-saving vaccines. but the downside of this system has been steep. With no caps on pricing, pharmaceutical firms often justify massive markups as necessary to fund research and development, R&D. While R&D is undeniably expensive, critics point out that U.S. drug makers also spend billions on advertising, lobbying, and shareholder payouts, expenses that have little to do with innovation. Over the past 2 decades, stories of patients rationing insulin, skipping cancer medications, or crowdfunding surgeries have filled headlines. By the late 2010s, surveys consistently showed that more than 70% of Americans believed drug prices were unreasonable. Politicians across the spectrum began calling for reform, though solutions varied. Democrats often pushed for government negotiation with drug companies, similar to models used in Canada and Europe, while Republicans leaned toward market-based incentives and transparency measures. When Donald Trump campaigned for president in 2016, lowering drug prices became a central promise. He accused Big Pharma of getting away with murder, language rarely used by a Republican candidate, and vowed to take them on. Once in office, his administration pursued several strategies. International Pricing Index, a proposal to tie the cost of U.S. drugs to prices paid in other countries. Executive orders on insulin and EpiPens, measures designed to expand access to cheaper versions of life-saving medications. Medicare negotiations, a controversial attempt to allow Medicare, the federal insurance program for seniors, to negotiate prices directly with pharmaceutical companies. Increased transparency, rules requiring hospitals and insurers to disclose the true costs of treatments, hoping to expose markups and encourage competition. Not all of these initiatives were fully implemented, but they sent shockwaves through the industry. Even the threat of aggressive reforms pressured companies to consider preemptive measures. Pharmaceutical companies and their allies mounted fierce opposition. They argued that price controls would reduce profits and, in turn, stifle innovation. Lobbyists poured millions into campaigns warning that government interference could lead to fewer new drugs reaching the market. Despite this, public opinion remained firmly against the industry. By 2020, polls showed that reducing drug prices was one of the top bipartisan priorities for voters, with Democrats and Republicans alike demanding action. Against this backdrop, Pfizer's decision to slash prices is not just a corporate announcement, it represents a turning point in a decades-long battle. For the first time, one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies has publicly acknowledged the political and public pressure driving its actions. Analysts say Trump's policies, though only partially implemented, set the stage for such a move. By challenging the industry narrative and threatening structural reforms, his administration created an environment where companies faced a stark choice: cut prices voluntarily or risk having them forced down by law. Pfizer chose the former. And in doing so, the company may have changed the calculus for the entire sector. If competitors follow suit, the American pharmaceutical market could be entering a new era, one where affordability is no longer an afterthought but a central pillar of corporate strategy. The background makes one thing clear: Pfizer's announcement did not occur in a vacuum. It is the culmination of decades of frustration, political wrangling, and mounting public anger over drug prices. Whether it becomes the start of a genuine transformation or just a temporary concession will depend on how the industry, government, and patients respond in the months and years ahead. Pfizer's announcement of discounted prescription medications has raised widespread interest, but questions remain about the exact scope of the initiative. According to company representatives, the program is extensive, targeting a countless number of medications across multiple categories, from chronic disease treatments to specialty drugs used for complex conditions. Pfizer's plan reportedly covers chronic disease medications, insulin, heart medications, and diabetes drugs, which millions of Americans rely on daily. Cancer treatments, certain chemotherapies and targeted therapies, where out-of-pocket costs often reach tens of thousands of dollars per year. Vaccines, select immunizations that were previously high cost, particularly for adult populations. Rare disease therapies, medicines for conditions like cystic fibrosis or muscular dystrophy, which often carry prohibitive prices. The company did not provide a precise list, citing ongoing negotiations with insurers and distribution channels. However, Pfizer emphasized that the reductions will affect both brand name and newly approved medications, signaling a broad commitment rather than isolated changes. While exact numbers remain in flux, early estimates suggest that the discounts could save U.S. patients hundreds of millions of dollars annually. This projection accounts for both direct cost reductions at pharmacies and decreased copayments through insurance plans. Healthcare economists have highlighted that these savings could be particularly significant for patients managing multiple chronic conditions, a demographic often faced with cumulative costs that run into thousands of dollars per year. The program will be phased in over the next 12 months, beginning with medications used by the largest patient populations. Early adopters include insulin users, patients with cardiovascular disease, and individuals on select chronic condition medications. Pfizer plans to expand the program gradually, incorporating additional drugs and therapeutic areas in subsequent phases. The phased rollout allows the company to monitor impact, adjust pricing strategies, and work closely with insurers and pharmacies to ensure smooth implementation. Industry analysts note that this approach reflects lessons learned from previous attempts at large-scale discount programs, which sometimes faced delays due to logistical challenges. Insurance and healthcare industry response. The broader healthcare industry has taken notice. Insurers have welcomed the news, noting that lower drug prices could reduce overall claims costs and potentially lower premiums over time. Pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, which negotiate pricing on behalf of insurers, are actively reviewing the list of discounted drugs to integrate them into their formularies. Experts also emphasize the potential ripple effect. Other pharmaceutical companies, observing Pfizer's bold move, may introduce similar programs to remain competitive. This could lead to a market-wide shift, with patients benefiting from broader discounts beyond Pfizer's offerings. Potential challenges. While the program is ambitious, some challenges remain. Awareness, ensuring that patients know about the discounts and how to access them is crucial. Consistency, discounts must be applied uniformly across pharmacies and insurance plans to avoid confusion. Sustainability, critics warn that long-term sustainability depends on Pfizer maintaining profitability while offering deep discounts. Pfizer, however, remains confident. Officials argue that the combination of policy incentives, public goodwill, and increased market share will offset potential revenue losses. Early patient reactions. Even in the early stages of the announcement, patients have expressed optimism. "I've had to skip doses because my insulin was too expensive," said one diabetic patient in Texas. "If these discounts are real, it could change my life." Advocacy groups have echoed this sentiment, calling the program a landmark step toward affordable healthcare. While cautious, they acknowledge that such a comprehensive discount initiative from one of the world's largest drug makers is unprecedented. Political implications. Pfizer's announcement to slash drug prices carries ramifications far beyond healthcare. In the political arena, the move has quickly become a focal point, with supporters, critics, and analysts weighing in on its potential impact on domestic politics and the broader national conversation around healthcare reform. Trump's continued influence. Even though Donald Trump is no longer in office, his policies continue to shape the political and regulatory landscape. By openly linking Pfizer's initiative to reforms enacted during his presidency, the former president's team has cast the discounts as a validation of his approach to healthcare. President Trump promised Americans he would take on Big Pharma, and this is proof he did, said a spokesperson for Trump's political organization. Supporters argue that the announcement will energize his base, particularly older voters who rely heavily on prescription medications. Political analysts note that framing the discounts as a direct result of Trump's policies serves a dual purpose. It underscores the former president's ongoing influence while positioning him as a champion of the average American in contrast to current leadership. Bipartisan reactions. The reaction from Democrats has been more cautious. While party leaders praised the discounts as a win for patients, they stopped short of attributing success to Trump's policies. Some officials pointed out that comprehensive healthcare reform requires structural changes, not one-time discounts from a single company. Lowering drug costs is long overdue, said a senior Democratic senator. But patients need systemic solutions, not just corporate concessions tied to political messaging. Republicans, by contrast, have largely celebrated the move. For many, the announcement validates the conservative argument that market-based reforms and regulatory pressure, rather than government price controls, can drive meaningful results. Analysts suggest that the timing of the announcement, amid rising concerns over healthcare costs and inflation, could provide a political boost for GOP candidates in upcoming elections. Implications for upcoming elections. Healthcare remains one of the top issues for American voters. Polls consistently show that access to affordable medications is a decisive factor for both seniors and middle-income families. By linking Pfizer's decision to Trump's policies, Republican strategists hope to frame the former president as a problem solver who delivers tangible results. Meanwhile, Democrats face the challenge of reframing the narrative. Critics warn that the GOP may capitalize on the announcement to claim credit for improving Americans' lives, even though the administration in power is not directly responsible for Pfizer's move. The framing of political messaging around this issue could influence voter perception, particularly in key swing states where healthcare affordability is a top concern. Congressional oversight and policy discussion. The announcement also has implications for Congress. Lawmakers may see this as an opportunity to revisit pharmaceutical pricing legislation, using Pfizer's initiative as a case study in voluntary corporate action versus regulatory mandates. Some legislators argue that voluntary discounts, while beneficial, cannot replace comprehensive reforms that ensure all Americans have access to affordable medications. Others point to Pfizer's move as evidence that incentives, rather than punitive measures, can encourage the industry to act in the public interest. Public perception and media coverage. Media coverage has been intense, with major outlets highlighting both the economic and political dimensions of the news. Headlines emphasizing Trump's role have generated viral attention on social media, further amplifying the perception that his policies continue to shape outcomes even after his presidency. Political analysts note that the intersection of healthcare policy and political branding is particularly potent in this instance. By framing Pfizer's discounts as a direct result of Trump-era reforms, the story becomes not just about healthcare, but about leadership, accountability, and the effectiveness of executive policy initiatives. Potential challenges. Despite the political excitement, there are potential pitfalls. If patients encounter delays or inconsistencies in accessing the discounts, critics could argue that the announcement was more symbolic than substantive. Similarly, opponents may use the opportunity to question whether Trump-era policies were truly the cause, pointing to a combination of market pressures, public outcry, and corporate strategy as contributing factors. Moreover, future elections could hinge on whether other pharmaceutical companies follow Pfizer's lead. If similar discounts do not materialize across the industry, the political narrative could shift, with Democrats highlighting the limits of voluntary corporate action. Conclusion. In summary, Pfizer's discount program is more than a corporate decision, it is a political lightning rod. For Trump and his allies, it reinforces claims of effective leadership and regulatory foresight. For Democrats, it represents a challenge to reassert the importance of systemic healthcare reforms. And for voters, it may influence perceptions of leadership, accountability, and the ongoing struggle to make healthcare affordable in the United States. The political ramifications of this announcement will unfold over the coming months, particularly as campaigns ramp up and healthcare costs remain at the forefront of public concern. Analysts agree that Pfizer's move has created a moment that politicians and parties cannot ignore, one that could reshape messaging, voter priorities, and the broader debate over the cost of healthcare in America. Economic impact. Pfizer's decision to reduce prescription drug prices carries significant economic implications, both for individual households and the broader healthcare system. Experts suggest that the move could reduce out-of-pocket costs for millions of Americans while potentially reshaping how pharmaceutical companies approach pricing in the U.S. market. Household savings. For patients, the most immediate impact will be financial relief. Families managing chronic illnesses such as diabetes, heart disease, or cancer often spend thousands of dollars annually on medications alone. According to a 2024 survey by the Kaiser Family Foundation, roughly 25% of Americans report skipping doses or not filling prescriptions due to cost. With Pfizer's discounts, patients may see a substantial decrease in their monthly medication expenses. Analysts estimate that the average patient using multiple Pfizer medications could save $1,000 to $3,000 per year, while larger-scale savings across the U.S. population could total hundreds of millions annually. Such savings are particularly meaningful for seniors, who rely heavily on medications and frequently live on fixed incomes. Lower drug costs can reduce financial stress, improve adherence to treatment plans, and ultimately lead to better health outcomes. Impact on insurance companies. Insurers are also likely to benefit from Pfizer's discount program. Lower prescription prices can reduce overall claims costs, which could translate into lower premiums or copayments for policyholders. Some insurance companies have already expressed optimism, viewing the discounts as a welcome step toward controlling rising healthcare costs. Pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, which negotiate drug prices on behalf of insurers, may leverage the reduced prices to secure better deals across broader formularies. This could incentivize other pharmaceutical companies to follow Pfizer's lead, sparking competitive pricing that further benefits consumers. Broader market effects. Pfizer's move may also have implications for the pharmaceutical industry as a whole. Competitors are under increased pressure to match or exceed the discounts to remain competitive in a highly scrutinized market. Analysts predict a potential ripple effect, where similar programs could emerge across multiple companies, leading to a shift in the U.S. drug pricing landscape. While Pfizer will undoubtedly face reduced revenues from discounted medications, the company appears to be betting that the benefits, including strengthened brand reputation, increased market share, and goodwill with policymakers and the public, will offset short-term losses. Experts argue that this strategic positioning may prove advantageous in both domestic and international markets. Economic challenges and considerations. Despite the potential benefits, several challenges remain. Critics warn that discounts must be applied consistently across states, insurance plans, and pharmacies to achieve meaningful impact. Any gaps in implementation could reduce the program's effectiveness and create confusion for patients and providers. Additionally, some economists caution that reduced profits for pharmaceutical companies could affect research and development (R&D) budgets. However, Pfizer executives contend that careful planning and efficiency improvements will allow continued innovation without compromising affordability. Macroeconomic implications. On a larger scale, lower prescription drug prices could contribute to moderating inflation in healthcare spending, which has been a persistent concern in the United States. With healthcare costs accounting for nearly 18% of U.S. GDP, even small reductions in drug pricing can have measurable economic effects. Moreover, increased patient adherence to prescribed treatments could lead to lower hospitalizations and emergency care costs, generating savings for both public and private healthcare systems. The cumulative economic benefits, from household relief to reduced system-wide expenditures, may be substantial, demonstrating that targeted pharmaceutical pricing policies can have broad-reaching consequences. Conclusion. Pfizer's discount program represents a potentially transformative economic event. Households may see tangible financial relief, insurers could enjoy lower claims costs, and the pharmaceutical market may experience a shift toward more competitive and patient-focused pricing. While challenges remain, including ensuring consistent application of discounts and balancing R&D investment, the move is widely viewed as a positive step for Americans burdened by high drug costs. Analysts suggest that if other companies follow Pfizer's lead, the broader economic impact could be profound, creating a new paradigm in the U.S. healthcare economy. Expert analysis. Pfizer's announcement of widespread prescription drug discounts has drawn attention from experts across healthcare, economics, and policy. Analysts largely agree that the move is unprecedented, but they also emphasize the importance of evaluating its real-world impact on patients, insurers, and the pharmaceutical industry. Healthcare professionals weigh in. Healthcare providers have been quick to highlight the potential benefits for patient adherence and overall health outcomes. Medication affordability is one of the biggest barriers to treatment compliance, said Dr. Linda Chavez, an endocrinologist based in Chicago. When patients can't afford insulin or heart medications, they skip doses or stop treatment entirely. If Pfizer's discounts are implemented effectively, we could see dramatic improvements in patient health and reduced hospitalizations. Pharmacists echo this sentiment, noting that patients often struggle to understand complex pricing structures. A clear, predictable discount program could remove a lot of stress and confusion, said Mark Reynolds, a pharmacist in Texas. Patients knowing exactly what they owe at the counter is huge. Economic and policy experts. Economists are closely examining the broader implications for the healthcare system and the pharmaceutical market. Dr. Robert Simmons, a healthcare economist at Georgetown University, pointed out, this initiative demonstrates how market pressures and policy signals can influence corporate behavior. Pfizer's willingness to reduce prices voluntarily may prompt competitors to act, potentially reshaping drug pricing norms in the U.S. Policy analysts note that linking discounts to Trump-era reforms highlights the interplay between politics and corporate decision-making. Even partial policy changes can create an environment where companies feel compelled to respond, said Sarah O'Neill, a healthcare policy expert. Pfizer's move may be the first tangible proof that strategic policy pressure works without the need for immediate legislation. Patient advocacy groups. Patient advocates are cautiously optimistic. For decades, we've fought for transparency and affordability in medication pricing, said Maria Lopez, director of the nonprofit group Patients First. Pfizer's announcement is a step in the right direction, but we will be watching closely to ensure the discounts are accessible and sustainable. Real impact requires monitoring and accountability. Advocacy groups emphasize that while voluntary programs can provide relief, they cannot fully replace systemic reform. Many call for legislation that ensures affordability across all pharmaceutical companies, not just one. Skeptical perspectives. Not all experts are convinced that the benefits will be universal. Some raise concerns about whether the discounts will be applied consistently across insurance plans, pharmacies, and states. There's always a risk of uneven implementation, warned Dr. Henry Wallace, a health policy consultant. If patients face confusion or delays, the practical impact could be far less than the headlines suggest. Others caution that while short-term savings may be significant, long-term sustainability depends on Pfizer maintaining profits and R&D investment. Critics fear that deep discounting could lead to reduced funding for future innovations if not balanced carefully. International comparisons. Some analysts point out that U.S. patients still pay far more than their counterparts in countries with government-regulated pricing, such as Canada, Germany, and the UK. While Pfizer's discounts represent progress, experts stress that meaningful change will require industry-wide adjustments and policy support to match global standards. Key takeaways. Experts largely agree on several points. Pfizer's initiative is historic and unprecedented in scope. It has the potential to improve patient adherence and health outcomes. The economic and political context played a critical role in prompting corporate action. Long-term success will depend on implementation consistency, sustainability, and industry-wide adoption. In short, while the program is widely celebrated as a positive step, it also underscores the complex interplay between healthcare costs, corporate strategy, and policy influence. Analysts agree that the coming months will reveal whether Pfizer's move is a one-off corporate gesture or the start of a broader transformation in the U.S. pharmaceutical market. Public reaction. Pfizer's announcement of discounted prescription medications has sparked a wave of reactions across the United States, ranging from celebration to cautious optimism. Social media platforms, patient forums, and advocacy organizations have been abuzz with discussion, highlighting both the excitement and the questions surrounding the program. Social media response. On platforms like Twitter and Facebook, Americans quickly shared their opinions. Hashtags such as #AffordableMeds, #PfizerDiscounts, and #HealthcareRelief began trending within hours of the announcement. Many users expressed gratitude and relief. Finally, I can afford my insulin without skipping doses. "Thank you, Pfizer," tweeted a diabetic patient from Texas. "If this is real, it's life-changing for seniors like my mom who were struggling to pay for her heart medication," wrote another user from Florida. Others shared skepticism, warning, "Let's see if these discounts actually reach the pharmacy counter or if it's just marketing." The online conversation highlighted the deep need for affordable medications in the U.S., with thousands of users recounting personal struggles with high drug costs. Patient testimonials. Healthcare providers and advocacy groups have shared stories of patients who could directly benefit from the program. Maria Thompson, a retired schoolteacher in Ohio, described her relief. "I've been rationing my blood pressure medication for years because of the cost. If Pfizer delivers on these discounts, it could improve my health and peace of mind tremendously." Another patient in New York explained, "I've had to make impossible choices between paying for my arthritis medication and other household expenses. Even small discounts make a huge difference." These testimonials reflect the real-world impact that lower drug prices could have on millions of Americans, particularly seniors, chronic disease patients, and those without comprehensive insurance coverage. Advocacy group perspectives. Patient advocacy organizations have praised Pfizer's initiative, calling it a step toward healthcare equity, while emphasizing the need for accountability. Patients First, a national nonprofit, issued a statement, "Pfizer's program represents progress, but true change requires monitoring and transparency. We encourage patients to report experiences and ensure the discounts are applied consistently." The Chronic Illness Alliance noted, "Programs like this can prevent medication rationing and improve health outcomes, but systemic reforms are still essential to guarantee long-term affordability." Advocates stressed that while the discounts are welcome, they should not replace broader policy measures aimed at reducing healthcare costs across the board. Public caution and concerns. Despite widespread optimism, some Americans remain cautious. Concerns include whether all patients, including those with high-deductible plans or no insurance, will benefit equally. The consistency of discounts across different pharmacies and states. Long-term sustainability of the program if profits or R&D are impacted. Many voiced hope that the initiative would serve as a model for other pharmaceutical companies, potentially leading to a broader reduction in drug prices nationwide. Summary. Overall, the public reaction reflects a mix of excitement, relief, and cautious optimism. Patients and advocates see Pfizer's discount program as a potential lifeline for millions, while social media buzz demonstrates the urgent demand for affordable medications. At the same time, Americans are closely watching to see if the program's promises translate into tangible, lasting savings at the pharmacy counter. Public caution and concerns. Despite widespread optimism, some Americans remain cautious. Concerns include whether all patients, including those with high-deductible plans or no insurance, will benefit equally. The consistency of discounts across different pharmacies and states. Long-term sustainability of the program if profits or R&D are impacted. Many voiced hope that the initiative would serve as a model for other pharmaceutical companies, potentially leading to a broader reduction in drug prices nationwide. Summary. Overall, the public reaction reflects a mix of excitement, relief, and cautious optimism. Patients and advocates see Pfizer's discount program as a potential lifeline for millions, while social media buzz demonstrates the urgent demand for affordable medications. At the same time, Americans are closely watching to see if the program's promises translate into tangible, lasting savings at the pharmacy counter.